Hello and welcome to History How-Tos. My name is Greg Thornton and today I'm going to be looking at worked examples. So what are worked examples and how can they be best applied and utilised within the history classroom? Now this video is going to accompany this sheet here, which is on the How-To website, and gives you examples of what worked examples are, what does the research say, how can you use them, and some of the do's and don'ts to using worked examples within the classroom, and hopefully providing some specific examples for us. One of the things that I found over the years from training is, you can go to a really good CPD that talks about cognitive science or any ideas, but there's nothing that ever really links up to, well, how can I use that in my classroom, as a history teacher? So hopefully what you get from this video is some really good examples, and I can show you some examples that you can take away and apply within your classroom straight away. So firstly, what are worked examples? Now the simplest definition is a worked example is a completed problem that students can see and refer to throughout learning. So what do we mean by a problem? Okay, so in history that could be a completed task, such as a semi-completed table so students can see how to fill the information out. It could be a paragraph or an essay. Recently I think a lot of you have been reading and using the writing revolution. It could even be a sentence, a model sentence, an example sentence that students can see and refer to throughout their learning, which will obviously help them make progress. Now, there is loads of research into worked examples, and it forms part of the big cognitive load theory, which is such a popular part of educational theory and research at the moment. And a lot of it came from the work of John Sweller. As we know, Dylan William, Daniel Willingham, and many of the big hitters in educational research, they really talk about it. But this is what Dylan William says. He says, I've come to the conclusion that Sweller's cognitive load theory is the most important thing for teachers to know. And I would say that, understanding some parts of cognitive load theory has massively helped the way I teach and the way I think about my lessons, to coincide with a lot of the history pedagogy that we've got in our community. So one of the most popular diagrams ways of modelling what cognitive load theory is William's simple model of memory here. Now, we have two types of memory, really. We have working memory. So that is what we use to do the tasks that we are doing. So, for example, if I was typing something, but my working memory is doing that, is processing that. But our working memory is finite. We can only have a certain amount of information coming in and working at one time. It gets overloaded. We get cognitive load if too much is going on. So if you think when you're learning to drive for the first time, and you've got to have understanding of the road, the gears, your clutch, the windows, and you've obviously got the driving instructor pecking you, you're going to get cognitive load because you're not fluid in any of these things, and a lot of it is new information to you. Whereas we have long-term memory, and that's infinite, and you can constantly build and add to that. And as knowledge is like Velcro. Once there is knowledge, stuff sticks to it. And this is kind of this idea of schema, is that knowledge builds up into maps of knowledge and continues and allows you to explain and link things together based on the knowledge you know already. And if you applied that thinking to driving again, the more practice you have and you practice on specific areas of your driving and you see people modelling how to do things, you get better at it and you get more fluid. So your working memory is being used less because you've committed many of the tasks of driving, like gear change, to your long-term memory. You remember what to do. Oh, I need to change to third gear when I reach this rev or this speed. And one of the things that worked examples can do, by using these model examples, is really help reduce cognitive load. Breaking things down using worked examples is a great way to reduce the load on your working memory and transfer things via learning to your long-term memory. So John Sweller, who is kind of the big guy in worked examples and cognitive load theory, he really pushes worked examples, and he says they're probably one of the best, possibly the best means of learning how to solve problems. And by using worked examples as step-by-step demonstration of solving or performing a task or solving them is excellent for your working memory. Breaking down how to write an essay into a step-by-step demonstration led by you, the teacher expert, is a really good way of reducing load on your working memory and then helping things by learning into your long-term memory. So massive support from research, and a lot of the work Swell has done is in maths and science, and there is some English stuff out there, but really supportive of the use of worked examples. Also, Rosenshine, again, someone else who's really in favour at the moment. The excellent work of Tom Sherrington to kind of spread the word of it even more. As part of his principles instruction, these 12 of them, he really emphasises using worked examples, by providing models through teacher instruction and also practice. They all tie together, but the crux that's in the middle of it is you are using a worked example, whether it's scaffolded in different ways, presented in different small steps, and obviously led by teacher instruction. So he says it's a really good way to help students grasp new concepts and processes, such as how to analyse a source, or how hyperinflation works, or simply essay writing. And lastly, one of the things that I really like is from the Making Every Lesson Count series, and I really picked up this bit by Sean Allison, is that worked examples allow you to highlight excellence to students. It's a spotlight, and that's why you use the image here. It's a spotlight at excellence. They can see what excellence looks like, the high expectations, and it makes it more possibly attainable for them. This idea of really good benefit to a metacognitive benefit here. So how do we use worked examples in the classroom? So I've got a few little general strategies here. So how do we use worked examples in the classroom? I've got a couple of general strategies here that are really useful. So firstly, completion examples. So rather than getting students to do a full paragraph themselves or a full answer, they complete a partially completed worked example, a model, and they complete the missing parts. And that allows you to really hone in on certain areas that you want students to improve on. So for example, in source work, if you want students to really pick out using quotes, or details from a source, you could give them a lot of the other answer, pre-write it, and they have to pick relevant quotes to go into that example. So you can really use it to hone in certain areas. Live modelling. A lot of you do this. Visualisers are a great tool to have in the classroom now. And by scripting and doing a live worked example as a teacher is a hugely beneficial task for your students. And I think as well as a teacher yourself, it massively benefits my practice by doing live modelling and talking through the model, highlighting what I'm going to do, my thinking out loud, and even saying, oh, this bit's quite hard actually, even I struggle with this, it's that process of, seeing inside the teacher's mind is excellent. And you can either use a visualizer or you can type live on your computer screen. Dan Warner, meanwhile, has a wonderful template on his blog that allows you to type live on the computer screen. For those of you with messy handwriting like me, wonderful. And one of the big things is, thinking about this cognitive load, is that students need to sit in silence and listen to you while live modelling. We don't want distraction. We don't want to cause extraneous load. We want them to listen to you and watch you on the screen or the visual doing this and typing. You can even get them, you can also do it in complete silence and they tell you what you've done. This is once they are at more of an expert level. And you can also critique it. Backwards fading. This is a thing that I absolutely love. I, we, you. I've done a lot of work on this myself. And the idea is that you use worked examples in a fading approach. You do a lot of heavy I. You write work models led by the teacher. And then eventually you reduce the amount of inputs that you give to students. So together we will create a worked example, and eventually you will create your own example. You will complete the work yourself. So that is your fading teacher instruction, fading teacher guidance, a way that eventually they can do things independently. And lastly, problem pairs. This is an idea actually that I got from maths, and I would really, really recommend going to see maths teachers if you want to see what great modelling and worked examples looks like, go see Maths. You know, they do this stuff every lesson all the time and such great quality that you can earn loads. So problem pairs is by providing a completed worked example and a problem next to it that is exceptionally similar, but they can't copy the answer. So they have to apply their thinking to a similar problem, to a similar answer, but it's only slightly different that they still have to write something different, because you obviously don't want them just copying. You want them to use, oh, that's beneficial, I can use that, but I can't just copy it word for word. And we're going to see an example of that in a moment. So 4 ways that you can use worked examples in the classroom, and you know, this isn't all of them. There are many other ways as well. So firstly, completion examples. So this is an example here of some work from my current year 11. I've just been doing a workbook, and step 1, we've gone through an I answer where I have written one out, and we've talked about what the key parts, etc. This time round, they are doing a completion example, and I've given them the topic sentence, the opening sentence, and some basic information, but they have to complete the remainder of the paragraph here. So they're practicing applying some specific knowledge and linking back to the question. That was a skill that my students were really struggling to do there, is always link back to the question and use some real good examples there. So that's example of a completion one. So you can pick certain areas. If you want them to write better introductory topic sentences, leave that blank. You know, you can use these to your own benefit for each class that you're with. You can change this around to any class. Live modelling. Yes, scripting it live in front of the class. So here's an example of one with year 8 that I did where we talked about how useful is The Simpsons. This is a bottom set year 8 class, and I scripted it live in front of everyone, and then they talked through why I've done this, and we collaborated in marking it and in discussing it. On the right here is that example of writing it on the board. So this is what we did by doing a live model on typing it up on the board. My handwriting, as you can see, is woeful. And this is just one of the slides that I put, live modelling. You know, I'm going to write this live, you know, no talking. Okay, just watch me, the idea of the process of, and listen to what I'm doing. And I quite like to use different colour pens so I can highlight the different parts of an essay. Yeah, really good. Love doing this. Backwards fading. Yeah, I, we, you. I've kind of talked about it already. This is an example of one of the A3 sheets that I do here. Again, they're on the Mr. Thought and Teach blog if you would like to download an example of them. They work great on A3 paper. You know, you can get some of the, this is an 8-mark Edexcel source question, but you can do 12, 16 markers all on one page. And what you can kind of see here is that it's not always I, we, you. I've actually stretched it out to I, we, you. So a bit more collaboration with me here, you know, a bit more of me helping and guiding them through. So this one there we write as a class, and then they have a go at filling these bits out themselves, and then obviously eventually independent example. Problem pairs. So I talked about this before, and this is a problem pair for a 4-marker Edexcel follow-up question. So this question, I suppose there are multiple answers you could get from a source. So I've done a model answer on the left here, this one about the RMC staff, and I will ask students to do another thing that they can follow-up question using this based on the same source. So they're still having to use the same type of skills, the same source, but I want them to write something slightly different. But they can see here from the work we've been doing that the question I've asked links to the detail, and the source I've used is explained. And again, you're trying to use something similar. These were really good with short answers because they can kind of think, oh, this is the process I've done. How can I do something similar? So a couple of do's and don'ts really with worked examples. Do plan your worked example. A really good idea is to sit and plan these out. Work out what you're going to say. You know, when I do these, I either write out the model answer and have it in front of me when I'm doing the visualizer, or I write bullet points of things that I'm going to do, questions that I might ask. Use student answers from previous years. You know, a great thing to do is you can either you can request exam papers from the summer exams, or just scan copies from books and essays and assessments that you can just keep. and you can use them. And I think the power sometimes is that if students can see an example that a fellow student has done, it's like, wow, someone did this. Oh, I know that student. Wow, that's great work. I'd like to be like them. Always explicitly talk through the process while modelling. Narrate it. Why have you picked this word? Why not this one? Oh, I've written this down. I'm going to change that. I'm going to do something else. And the idea is that it's good to fix and redraft even while you're writing an essay. And the big one, and this is a big thing for worked examples, and a study I did with the Chartered College kind of proved this. As students become better, reduce the amount of worked examples and I here. So work towards doing more we stuff and eventually more you. The evidence has proven that worked examples are brilliant for novices, weaker students, but as they become more proficient and experts, they're actually less powerful. So as they get better, you step away the guidance and use more. You're doing this now, and we can maybe as a class look at your example, your worked example you've created, but there's less teacher instruction. A couple of don'ts though. Don't just give students just a model answer and ask them to read it themselves. I've done this before though. I've said, right guys, here's a top mark answer, have a look at it. You need to talk through it. You need to deconstruct it together. You need to tell them why it's so good. Another thing that teachers do, and I've done plenty of times, don't just give them the best level answers. Don't just give them a grade 8 or 9 example. Give them multiple examples. Here is a brilliant answer. Here's a less brilliant answer. And here's a poor answer. What is the difference? How can we compare these? Or 2 answers and say, a bit of comparative judgment here. Which one's better? Which of these is better? And why? So, and again, this is great for kids that are becoming a bit more expert when they can work out, oh yes, they've done this, but they forgot to do this. You can combine them together to say, right, if you could combine them together, how would you write that into a new paragraph? And don't rush this. Yes, I love that I, we, you sheet. And that's great for a single activity, but a lot of the advice is, this is slow. And if you want to build doing backwards fading worked examples, build it into your curriculum and your units, your inquiries. And it kind of looks like this, you do lots of instruction. You try something together. They struggle with it. It goes back to you leading it. Then we do another collaborative one. And then it goes to you. It's constant reflection. You've got to be responsive and flexible as a teacher. They're not always going to get it straight away. So just some other last minute ideas for the history classroom then. What could you do? So you could use it for source utility. So use completion examples to pick out certain areas. I talked about that one before. Paired work. So give students 2 or 3 answers, get them to compare which is better and why, and annotate and write it up, which I've just talked about before. Use I, we, you for brilliant, which is brilliant for longer answers. It's very good to break down, say, a 12-mark Ed Excel answer. That's 3 paragraphs. I, we, and you, sorted. And lastly, and this is a great one, and I know James Fitzgibbon on Twitter is brilliant for this. Is worked examples of the work you expect. How often do you set a task and the kids go, "Don't get it, sir. What do I need to do again?" Well, if you, for example, leave your instructions on the board, but leave an example of what you expect here. So there's a photo of a similar task, but also there is an example of one of the answers there. So they go, oh yes, sir has provided me with an example here. So you can either model it on the board there, or sometimes just do it live with them. At least 1 or 2 to get them going. And again, it's as a teacher, do I need to give these more instruction or not? Worked example is a very good tool. So hopefully some of that's been useful. And I thought I'd leave and finish really with 2 books and a paper that are really useful. Rosenshine's Principles in Action. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this already. It's fantastic and contains some good bits where they talk about worked examples and modelling, etc. The middle book by Chris Runicles, Making a Real History Lesson Count. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's like a Bible for any new teacher, and even experienced teachers can pick things up and read it and find things. And there's a really good section on like modelling and sharing best practice. And if you are really interested in that, so the depth, and you want to get really into research and evidence-based practice, Sweller, Ayres and Kaluga's Cognitive Load Theory, their paper, is actually really good. It's deep in parts, but if you want to get to the nitty gritty, I would recommend reading that. So, just to finish off, thank you for this. It's my first video I've done, so I hope it wasn't too terrible and it wasn't too stumbly. Please visit the site, mrthorntonteach.com/how-to. Subscribe to the channel and do get involved. We would love more people to do some of these videos. And obviously, His TV is hosting them all, so if you want to watch any more of them, please do. Thank you so much. Cheers.